In the United States and other Western countries, individuals have the privilege of free press and speech, as well as a media system that is uncensored by the government. Activism is somewhat taken for granted, as is the ability to organize freely. In other countries, however, this privilege does not exist. In these cases, social media provides a valuable tool for activists to not only evade government repression and control, but also for outside nations to monitor events that may otherwise be censored by the government. In this video, we will discuss a few of many case studies in which social media has played an integral role in holding repressive authorities accountable and lighting the spark of change.
Plagued by the reign of dictator Hosni Mubarak for over 30 years, Egyptian citizens and protesters finally came together to voice their dissent against the oppressive government in late 2010. Alarmed by the heavy force of police brutality, political repression, and the use of inhumane retaliatory tactics to peaceful protests, the Egyptian revolution was mainly fueled by the access to social media platforms, which allowed for a greater level of free speech where demonstrations could be planned and viewed by supporters. From the introduction of the internet to the development of Facebook in Arabic, protesters were gaining accessibility to events and support in their uprising. One major action taken by the Egyptian government was to completely shut down the internet in the country to prohibit the spread of radical ideals and messages. From January 25th to February 2nd, 2011, the internet was not available for users in Egypt as a form of punishment for using it against the government. This act faced extreme backlash from the leaders of the free world, including nations like the United States. Where Hillary Clinton advocated for the right for every human to exercise their free speech, forcibly preventing Egyptian citizens from using the internet to use their voice against political institutions was widely regarded as a violation of basic human rights, as the government had taken away the people's main form of free speech. However, due to the pressure from nations around the world, internet service was available again on February 2, 2011, and Hosni Mubarak resigned from his position on February 11th after 18 days of demonstrations, proving that the people always find a way to voice their beliefs.
The rise of social media usage in developing countries has made it easier for people to freely interact with others. In situations where the government limits the amount of freedom of speech and press to its citizens, social media can facilitate a larger movement towards change. For example, the Venezuelan government supports one of the most unstable and tyrannized powers in South America. The country currently experiences such a high inflation rate that its money has virtually become worthless to many citizens. Because food costs change dramatically over a matter of days, families experience food shortages often. Its president, Nicolas Maduro, refuses to acknowledge the dire situations of his people and continues to enforce his suppressive ideologies. He continues in his predecessor Hugo Chávez's footsteps by shutting down radio and TV stations, prosecuting journalists that have opposing views, and banning signs that encourage threatening messages towards his regime. But considering these circumstances, the Venezuelan people have not stopped fighting. In 2016, 62% of their citizens used the internet, compared to 44% in 2014. This contributed to the increased use of Twitter and an outlet called Telegram to spread unfiltered news about current events to its users. Since Venezuelan government agencies have no power over American social media outlets, Maduro can do little to stop his people from speaking their minds. Twitter users have exposed videos of government leaders getting arrested, spread information about upcoming protests, and highlighted the amount of corruption and mismanagement of resources in the regime. Most of this would be banned and filtered throughout traditional mass media outlets. Maduro and his regime continue to repress the ideas and rights of their people to this day. But now they can't continue to ignore the growing amount of opposition and protests, and social media continues to promote this change.
Iran's presidential elections in 2009 and the disputes and unrest that followed show a prime example of the value of social media, both as a tool for activism and also as a way for the outside world to follow events in a society controlled by state media. On June 12, 2009, a closely fought election race came to its climax when incumbent Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was declared victorious over the opposition leader Mir Hossein Mousavi with 63% of the vote. The election saw access to some websites and cell phone transmissions being blocked by the government. The Arabic network's Al Arabiya's Tehran bureau was closed for a week without reason, and Iran's Ministry of Culture banned foreign media from reporting in the streets of Tehran. Upon the announcement of the result, angry crowds gathered in Tehran and rioted in protests. They continued throughout the weekend and into Monday after the election. There were at least 8 deaths in the chaos. The protests included Mousavi and Ahmadinejad supporters turning out in the tens of thousands, the largest number since the revolution in 1979. Despite media being largely controlled and censored by the government, rallies and riots were coordinated and shared with the outside world prolifically. Iranians blogged, posted on Facebook, publicized on YouTube, and shared on Twitter information about the protests. Twitter was particularly poignant in this conflict. Iran became the most popular topic on the service worldwide. Twitter recognized the value of their service and delayed planned shutdown for maintenance for a day. In fact, the U.S. State Department, while not officially playing a role in the dispute, advised social networking organizations to remain open and accessible to Iranians. Without an embassy in Iran, these services allowed officials valuable insight into the unrest. Many saw the value that services like these provided and worked to increase access to them in Iran. Various players around the world, such as organizations like Haystack or the GIFC, worked to provide software to Iranians to aid them in avoiding censorship. After the Iranian revolutions, various other anti-government activities occurred in other areas of the Middle East, including Tunisia, Yemen, and Libya, and were similarly coined as Twitter revolutions.
The mainstream media continues to function as an arm of the Chinese government, although the focus has shifted to slightly favor audience interests. Despite this, the mainstream media does not operate in a free and independent space, so it stays away from contentious or controversial government topics. The online news reporting world, however, has a different dynamic. China has arguably one of the most sophisticated online censorship systems ever developed, but by no means does that fully prevent targeted content from entering the Chinese online space. Since the mainstream media essentially remains a mouthpiece for the views of the government, social media and networking sites allow for transformative changes to the Chinese communication environment, as shown by the Global Internet Freedom Consortium, a group of organizations that create and deploy anti-censorship technologies for use by Internet users in countries that restrict web information access. These technologies have enabled social media to be integral to the formation and rallying of groups for protest, where previously in Chinese society such practices would not have been permitted. Social media has also been used by Chinese civilians to keep their authorities accountable. This internet phenomenon has been coined the human flesh search engine in reference to netizens' abilities to overcome censors and rally in protest of an issue. A notable example of this involves the Watch Uncle. On August 6, 2012, there was a massive collision between a double-decker bus and a methanol tanker, killing 36 out of 39 passengers on the bus. The official in charge of overseeing the incident, Yang Dakai, was photographed grinning and was heavily criticized for his insensitivity regarding the incident. However, it was his exorbitantly priced watch that drew most of the attention after the publicizing of his picture. After a subsequent investigation by netizens and officials alike, it was discovered Dakai had been purchasing luxury goods far more costly than he could afford on his official salary, and 5 Swiss watches valued around 200,000 yuan were found in his possession. On September 21, 2012, Dakai was relieved of his official duties and was sentenced to 14 years of imprisonment for accepting bribes and for unaccounted ownership of luxury assets, both of which were at odds with party policies.
It is the words of Carl Bildt when he wrote for the Washington Post in 2010 that best sum up the idea this video attempts to convey, that internet freedom plays an integral role in evading the oppression of free media and activism. To quote, "2 decades ago, a wall made of concrete, built to divide the free and unfree, was torn down. Today, it is the freedom of cyberspace that is under threat from regimes as keen as dictatorships past to control and limit the possibilities of their citizens. They are trying to build firewalls against freedom. At the end of the day, I am convinced they are fighting a losing battle, that cyber walls are as certain to fall as the walls of concrete once did. I believe that this, internet freedom, will be one of the most important political issues in the years to come. It is certainly no coincidence that the last few years have seen an increasing number of regimes trying to increase their control over the content of the net. Thus, they acknowledge what we all know. The net can be a powerful instrument of freedom, of change, and of democracy. In this era of information technology, communication has been revolutionized. New technologies can assist in making governments more transparent and can stimulate citizens to take a more active role in the democratic governance of their country. Yet, technology alone cannot make information and expression of opinion free. Access to technology is needed as a catalyst for human rights.